To find the domain of a function like this one here means where are all the numbers that you are allowed to put in place of x. So I see a fraction, and that makes me immediately think that we are not allowed to divide by 0. So what we're going to do for this problem is try to figure out what values of x make the denominator 0. So off to the side, I'm going to take the denominator, which is x squared plus 22x plus 120, and I want to know where is it 0, because whatever those numbers are, we are not allowed to put them into this function. So to solve this quadratic, I think what we'll do is let's try factoring it. Can we break this into two linear factors? When factoring an x squared term, I know that in my factors, I'd have to have an x and an x. Everything up here is positive, so in my factors, I know I'll have to have an x plus and an x plus. And I'm left deciding I need two numbers that multiply to 120, yet add to 22. And I think those two numbers are going to be 12 and 10. So that is, if we were to multiply this out, x times x gives me x squared, 12 times 10 is 120, and then the sum of these two numbers is definitely 22. Now, to figure out where they're actually equal to 0, I can take each linear factor and set them equal to 0 separately. If I subtract 12 from both sides of this equation, I get that x is equal to negative 12. And if I subtract 10 from both sides of this equation, I get that x is equal to negative 10. And it is these two numbers that if you were to put into this equation, make it equal 0. So these two numbers are not in the domain of this function. And the reason is, if you take your function and you plug in, let's say, negative 12, in the function itself, you'd have 64 in the numerator, but you'd get 0 in the denominator, and that's an error. You can't divide by 0. Likewise, if you put negative 10 into this function, again, in the denominator, it would simplify to 0, giving you yet another error. Every other number is okay when put in place of x for this function. So we have to write this in interval notation. A shorthand way to write it would be to say, oh, well, the domain, it's every single number except for x is equal to negative 12 and negative 10. As an interval, you can express it like this. That's everything from negative infinity up until you get to negative 12. You can then use a union symbol to say, okay, we'll pick up at negative 12 and keep going, but we have to stop when we get to negative 10. And then we skip over 10 and go to positive infinity. So this is the way they want you to answer it in MyLab. It's written like this. So in terms of typing in your answer in an interval notation like this, saying you're skipping over negative 12 and negative 10, after you click in here, you can use this union symbol to enter in the U's, and then the parentheses just come from the keyboard. And so you can take this information and plug it into here, and that would be the answer to this problem.